Hey, Mark here, and I have a really cool giveaway for you. I have 5 4K UHD Blu-ray copies of the 2025 film Roofman up for grabs, and if you'd like to enter for a chance to win, just shoot me a message, beg Mark. Channing Tatum is really good in this movie. Kirsten Dunst, always great. Peter Dinklage, awesome. This is a really good movie that didn't get enough attention in theaters, and I think you're really gonna like it because it's a good movie. Roofman is a good movie, and I really enjoy it, and it makes me happy that I can offer 4K copies to y'all. So if you're interested in winning a copy, just shoot me a message and say, "Hey, Mark, I would love to win a copy of Roofman." A heartfelt caper with a twist of romance, Roofman starring Channing Tatum and Kirsten Dunst is now available at participating retailers from Paramount Pictures.
Hello and welcome to Movies, Films, and Flicks. I am Mark Hoffmeyer, and joining me, Megan Hoffmeyer,
Sarah Newworth, DJ Valentine, Billy Business, and Brendan Peters. This is Nadia Boetes. This is Nathan Leahy. It's David Cross. It's Jake Lewitt. Norbert Morvan. It's Lisa Leahy. Joey Lewandowski. John Levingood. Professor Mike Dillon. Nick React. Niall Moore. Adam Youngblood Hodges. Eric Hoffmeyer. It's Johnny Nunn. Hello and welcome to Movies, Films, and Flicks. I am Mark Hoffmeyer. Joining me is a man who, whenever he finds an evil book, he's going to read it. It's John Levingood.
I mean, was it like essentially bound in flesh that looked like it was deep fried? Because I lived in South Texas for a while and I love chicharrones, okay? If you like chicharrones, if you like a good chicharron, this book looks like it is made out of that pork crackling goodness.
Have you ever eaten an evil book?
I've eaten chicharrones. Is that a yes?
I
don't know that it wasn't an evil book.
Remember, I love the idea of just evil books laying around. Like, hey, let's read it. In college, John, we did some pretty stupid stuff, and in high school. So if you're out there and you're like, why not? I'd read it. Sure, I'll take this gun. I don't know.
I mean, look, if you go back far enough in time, we were like the first and second death victims of most stereotypical 20-something tropey horror movies. I mean, you and I may or may not have urinated into a very major college's administration building fountain in the past, and there may or may not be photography of it, and my penis may or may not be in that photography. And when we had that film developed, the developer at CVS may or may not have gone out of their way to give us an oversized print of my penis. This is all hypothetical, people. So I'm just saying, we were exactly the kind of people who would die at the beginning of these movies.
We would have read the evil book. And I used to weigh 250 back then, so we were pretty big. Like, we'll be all right. We can punch demons. And then I was like, oh yeah, like we'd have been done. But John, you know what's been the most? So we're starting an Evil Dead series, and we'll share a fun story about peeing and things every story. Now we also have to carry on that tradition, John.
Enough stories for that, yeah.
Speaking of Evil Dead, they didn't really have any running water at this place, so they had to bring water in. But they had a muddy, like mile-long trek that cars couldn't get through. So it's just like a miserable shooting experience, which I kind of love. But the number one thing,
cabin looks like it wouldn't have running water.
When they found it, it just had cow poop. Their first location fell through. Then they found this place in the middle of nowhere. Cow poop. It covered the entire floor. So they had to change the floor. They had to add in a basement. They had to reinforce all the walls. The ceilings were too low. They basically had to rebuild this thing. And they couldn't at times drive their trucks in. So they had to lug all their gear over a mile in Tennessee Decembers and January through like mud pits, like a mile of mud. But the one thing is, I first watched Army of Darkness. It became one of my all-time favorites. Then I watched Evil Dead 2 almost immediately. And for a while, I never watched Evil Dead. But now that I've watched Evil Dead, and that, now that I worked in the industry for years, and I teach film history, and I teach production and lighting, I teach camera editing, I am like really, smitten with Evil Dead now. Like, it's very rough. It was made by a 20-year-old who didn't know any better, and he said some of the things that he wouldn't even do anymore. But I always looked at this as like this rough kind of cut. Like, so they made Within the Woods, a short film, then they raised money in Detroit, went to Tennessee to make the movie. But now that I watch it, there's some gorgeous wide shots. There's some gorgeous overhead shots. There's a scene where Sam Raimi's hanging upside down, like with the backs of his knees hanging on a board so they can get that upside down shot. Like this is a very visual, and even the demon cam, shaky cams. This is a very
Early demon
assured,
shaky cam.
yeah, early, and it's very assured. They went to drive-ins and they studied how people responded to the horror movies and what they hated and what they loved, and they just wanted to build, like Sam Raimi was asked, how do you describe, what do you want to make out of this movie? He's like, I just wanted to entertain people. And now that I've read it, I re-listened to Bruce Campbell's book, If Gins Could Kill. I'll talk eventually. But after doing all this work and just years of kind of maybe getting older and appreciating technique more, I know this is 20-year-old kids. I know they went and remade it later, but this is quite a sight to behold as far as like visually, the sound mix, the gore, the practical effects. This is for 20-year-olds from Detroit sitting in the middle of nowhere, Tennessee, with no budget, freezing all the time, getting their gear stolen. This is a pretty awesome spectacle. And that's why it's part of like the most popular horror franchise ever. But it's been fun revisiting it, is what I was saying.
Yeah, I hadn't done like a full start to finish rewatch. I was probably limited to 20-minute segments for the last, gosh, I'm gonna say almost 20 years. Because once Evil Dead 2 came out, especially when you're younger,
Yeah,
you just watched that
that was
because
it.
it's
Yeah.
it's the better, more glitzy take on it, right? And then later you appreciate the OG more, but you're still just watching like clips or catching 20 minutes on Showtime late night when you're in college 20 years ago, like me or something. Sitting down and really watching this a couple times in the last week, start to finish, and paying attention. It's really impressive. I'm not saying like this is the holy crap amazing movie, right? I mean, I think that original Nightmare on Elm Street did wonders with direction and writing and acting at its time, but that also had a little more budget and a little more support. Whereas this had nothing, and it was made by someone with yet less experience because,
Yes.
Wes Craven was already a known entity in 1984. He was a known entity for, I want to say, 5 or 8 years already, because 1977, right? Hills
Last
Have
Hills,
Eyes.
yeah, Hills of Eyes, and he also did what, The Last House on the Left.
Last House on the Left. Oh, even older, right? That's late 60s.
Yeah.
So he's a known entity even. But for when you think of its budget and yeah, first timers, I think this is actually pretty outstanding. And people want to rave about some of the classics all the time. And they'll include things like Friday the 13th. Friday the 13th is no work of art. If you go
No,
back and watch that, it's perfectly serviceable
schlock.
a early 80s slasher fare that got borrowed upon much later, and it borrowed upon much before it. So it was just done a little better with a little more budget. And Kevin Bacon happened to be in it. And that gave it a lot of staying power.
Mhm.
And then it had like 89 sequels. And I love it. Fine. But this, for its budget, is much better than Friday the 13th. It might not be a Nightmare on Elm Street, in my opinion. But again, that's not comparing to apples to apples. That's comparing apples to baked apples and butter and cinnamon, right? It's just a more experienced, refined, higher budgeted set of apples. So this was really impressive. You had told me rewatching this just how almost, I don't know the word you used, but it just seemed to be so bright or scintillating or electric.
Visually
Again,
assured or something like that. Like it really, this is a movie that, and you're right, it was very, there's like some overhead shots where Ash is listening to the recorder. And remember in the beginning when they're eating, then the trap door opens up in that scene, the wide shot that is. Just
right,
the cam, the cam at the end was Sam Raimi on a bicycle, and that thing was amazing. And then the beginning, they're in a raft, and Sam has a board moving the camera around. They shot this on Super 8, like 16 millimeter. They shot this on Super 16 millimeter, and then blew it up to 35 millimeter. So they had this little camera that they could do whatever they wanted with. You know what's interesting too? He didn't just Dutch the camera. The production designer built chairs that were wonky. Everything was a little wonky. Everything was a little cockeyed in this set. People had done that before. I mean, the Cabinet of Dr. Caligari had done that. This wasn't anything new. But these were 20-year-old kids who went to Tennessee to make a movie. They slept 3 people per room. The ladies got their own rooms. The DP slept in the he slept in the laundry room of the place they're in. They had a guy making him like chocolate pizza. Apparently, he made him a chili that just drugged them all, but they had to eat it 2 nights in a row because they had nothing else. And these guys were like, they had no money. It was supposed to be like a quick shoot. It ended up going 12 weeks. People were miserable. People were cold. Sam said at one moment he just laid outside and wanted to die, but the producer put a blanket on him. Bruce blew out his ankle. Like these were just 20-year-old, for lack of a better term, idiots in the Tennessee wilderness, and they come out with this movie. And I kind of love that. I like how self-assured it is. I like how visually inventive it is. And there's one of the most awkward interviews you'll ever see. It's 42 minutes long. It's Sam Raimi in like 1982 and saying he loves The Thing, by the way, which made me happy. But he's very awkward. And they're interviewing him for 42 minutes about this movie. And they were like, "Hey, how'd you come up with each shot?" He's like, "Yeah, I just looked at each scene and I thought would be what would be the most interesting shot for the scene." And then I watched it again after listening to that, and they really, I don't know, I just think it's pretty cool that these guys made a short film. They pitched it to everybody in Detroit, all their family, raised money, went and made it, and then they got dressed up in suits, went to New York. I don't know if you heard the story. Bruce went to this apartment of this girl who liked him in New York, and he showed up with Sam and Rob Tappert, the producer. And then apparently Sam said that when he was trying to sleep, he just heard the lady wrestling with Bruce Campbell because she was trying to make moves on him. And like they stayed there trying to like get a distribution deal. Like they tried to get it distributed. That didn't work. They had to edit it. They had to cut it apart. They worked for 9 weeks doing stop motion. Like I just think the way that they put this together, the way they studied it, the only reason they chose horror because like it's easy to sell, which is the most case for things like that get released when they're low budget. But I don't know. I just think it's such, now that I've researched it fully, because I know everything about Evil Dead 2. I know everything about Army of Darkness. I didn't know everything about Evil Dead, even though I'd listened to Bruce Campbell's book. But going through it again, I don't know. It's just such a really interesting thing. And all these guys had really like long careers, long successful. They still have long successful careers, and they just came out of Michigan with a indie film called Evil Dead that sort of rocked the industry. And I don't know. I think that's pretty cool. And I know we're
Yeah.
not getting into the plot of the movie or the budget of the smoke because there's so much smoke in this film, but it's interesting watching 20-year-old kids be this self-assured.
Yeah, it's funny. You mentioned all the camera angles and hanging upside down and taking a shot from above, and in a way, this is kind of like the I don't know what I'm doing, but I care about what I'm doing version
Yes, yes.
of John Carpenter in the original Halloween. So we talked about original Halloween first, like over 500 episodes in the show, folks. I want to say it was episode 15 or 17 or 18. We compared original Halloween to Rob Zombie's remake of Halloween, and Mark was recounting the history of it and its budget and how much money John Carpenter put into. Would you call it kind of a slide mechanism for the camera?
Yeah, they had like they rented a Panaglide. They spent most of their money for that.
That
And
was
so
it.
but like that's what they rented. That's what most of their money went to because they knew that
Right.
was the most important thing.
So, so in this, though, these guys don't know what's most important. Sam Raimi's just thinking what's going to look good and how it's going to look good.
Yeah.
And he's just kind of doing guerrilla tactics to take all these great shots. And at the time, I don't even know how well appreciated this is. I think this is better appreciated after someone has watched 150 slashers from the 80s.
Yeah.
And then you see what the cheap ones look like and you see what the great ones look like. And you realize that the diversity of angles you're seeing, this is one of those things where if you've seen all these movies, even if you're not a film critic and you're not writing reviews and critically breaking these things down, you don't know what's different, but you know something's different, and eventually you hone in on it, and it's like, wait a minute, I'm looking at like the top of these people's heads. I'm looking from behind them as they're looking at something. I'm looking from the floor straight up at them, and that's a weird perspective. So there are all these angles, and again, they weren't doing it like it wasn't Da Vinci's insight, but the insight was there to approach that way, and that was really cool. And of all the things that work in this movie that might have been more calculated, this is something that works looking back. That is, let's just say, less calculated, and I
Yeah.
think that's pretty cool.
That's a great point. I wouldn't, it's not like punk rock filmmaking, but they just went and made it. And it's interesting. Sometimes we watch horror movies that are just very well shot and they're not feral at all and they don't seem to be inventive, but they're a good product, but they're just there. Like those bore the heck out of me. So it's kind of fun watching, but also that's the product of like a studio, or that's the product of a seventh time director. They just know how to get a movie made and they know what the movie's for, so they do it. This one, Sam Raimi said that the one thing on his mind through the entire production was that people gave him money and he wanted to pay them back their money. Like he didn't want to go and make something terrible. The main thing eating at him is he wanted to give everyone made, I think, 3.5 or 4.5 times their money back on this after 6 years. But his main goal was to be like, I need to make a good movie to make these people proud and to make sure that their money was well spent. And so like it's really interesting how he combined, they watched drive-throughs and they knew what would hit. They knew that they had to pack in the momentum, but they didn't quite know what to do yet. So they're out there in Tennessee going mad and just coming up with shots on the fly that somehow became iconic, whether like instinctually or like because they couldn't really process their film when they're in, middle of nowhere Tennessee. So they have no idea what this is going to
Yeah,
look
they're
like.
not watching dailies.
Yeah, exactly. And like they can't even process it there. So they had no idea like what they were doing or what it would look like. They just went out there and shot. But I think this is a very first time director's movie though, because you watch most first time directors movies who are, let's say, relatively unpolished. Like, let's say there's someone who's been in the industry for 20 years and then they direct their first film, or an actor who has been in the industry for a long time, they direct their first film, or someone who started off in comedy, did shorts like a Jordan Peele who made Get Out. That's a very assured first film. These kids were 20. So it's, I just think something really good went on in that cabin. And they'll never replicate it because they shot in, they rented a gymnasium to build their sets for the second one. They smartened up, but I think like the look of it, the feralness of it, the homemadeness of it, even like the little charming performances, and how much there's a lot of necklace in this movie. But like this is a very much of a first time young filmmaker, not like a first time filmmaker who's been in the industry for 20 years, if that makes sense. You can smell the kind of danger. You can kind of sense the like, man, these guys are covered in a lot of blood. This is a lot of blood. These people are hurting. This thing's pretty crazy. This is pretty bonkers. Like, it just seems like a movie where someone who's young. Am I making sense to you, John? Where
Sure,
it,
absolutely.
and I think that's what the charm is. And you know what's kind of cool? I rewatched all these movies with Megan, my wife, and she likes the first Evil Dead the most. She doesn't like Evil Dead 2 or Army of Darkness. She's like, he's an idiot. Like she's just not on on Ash's wavelength. Like she liked the first one more. So it's
To be fair, in the sequels, he turns into Kurt Russell from Big Trouble in Little China.
Yeah, he does. Yeah. And you know what's interesting? What we forget about the dynamic between Ash and Greg is, or Ashley, a lot of people call him a lot, and Greg, like he's not the, or Scott.
Scotty.
Yeah, Scotty. But yeah, I don't know why I said Greg. But they, between Scott's kind of like the alpha in this. He drives Ashley's car. He takes the gun. Ash can't take the axe. He's the one that goes downstairs and scares Ash. He goes into it first. So it's kind of fun. Like you don't really see characters like Ash in
Yeah,
cinema a
Ash
lot.
actually just felt kind of like not the nerd, but I'm just going to use a different analogous word, like almost like the dweeb.
Yeah.
Like he felt like the socially clumsy, less smooth, but still somewhat normalized character.
Yeah. I agree. He wasn't like a Revenge of the Nerds nerd. He wasn't a like a Scott or like a bro. He was just he seemed sort of real. And so watching this again too, I feel like Ash is a pretty interesting character in the horror canon because he's not a super tough guy who, you know, like Kurt Russell in The Thing. Like he's not Dr. Loomis. He's just this dude trying to survive, and he almost becomes, for lack of a better term, like a better final boy. Like he's the final
Yeah,
boy of
no,
this movie.
definitely.
Um,
Definitely a final boy.
like
Yeah.
he has to find his inner strength. He makes a lot of mistakes, and it's there aren't too many final boys in horror, so it's kind of fun watching. And the only reason they did that is because he took the most pain, and they just couldn't keep the other actors around too long, and they just knew Bruce would work for cheap. So de facto, he became the final boy, and he was actually the villain in their early short. But it's just kind of fun watching like a non Jack Burton Ash to sort of figure it out. And like he doesn't want to chop up his girlfriend. He's very much so second fiddle to Scott. it's they made some really interesting decisions out there in the woods.
Mhm.
I
Yeah, yeah,
I know
and
I keep saying that, John. They made interesting decisions in the woods.
at the same time, while Ash is totally different in this than in the subsequent movies, and a lot of other things are different, like we'll just say where the dial is on the humor. Obviously, the budget affects a lot of things. I just thought it was interesting how all of the iconography that we know from the Evil Dead movies really did kind of start in the first Evil Dead movie, even if it was on a very basic level. There are mirror gags in
Yeah.
all of the Evil Dead movies, and from the first one to the second one, it's a big development. To the third one, it's a huge development. The mirror shatters, and all the little evil ashes come out of it, right? And don't get me wrong, a lot of other movies have a lot of plays on mirrors, right? Prince of Darkness has plays on mirrors. Nightmare on Elm Street Part 3 has plays on mirrors, or maybe even other ones as well. So it's not like this is original, but I'm just saying that there were plays on mirrors in all these movies, and each time it amped up.
Yeah.
Uh, Things about the dismemberment that got amped up. The number of people that were dismembered from movie 1 to 2 to 3 went up. Ash's agency goes up, but that's a little different. The whole "I'll swallow your soul and join us" gets amped up even more in the second movie, when you literally have the lamp and the talking mounted deer head trying to proselytize him almost, or to get him to lower his guard, if you will, or drive him mad, however it is. So like there are a lot of things that in just the classic Evil Dead iconography that amp up. And one thing that I noticed that I'd kind of forgotten about from the first movie is in the first movie, when not it's not Linda, I think her name is Cheryl, his sister character,
Mhm.
is drawing, and then she scribbles and is possessed, and kind of scribbles the Book of the Dead. But when she's scribbling it, even though the camera is never looking clear at it, you can see that her scribbling hand is kind of veiny. Her hand is possessed before she's even infected officially by the evil from the woods, the famous or infamous tree rape scene. She has been infected by the presence of the evil. Her hand becomes pale and blue veiny, and it's drawing something, and then it goes back to normal. But then the second movie, his hand goes bad. He had to lock it off. They reflect on that even more in the third movie. That gets replayed in the remake in 2013 with Fede Alvarez. And then they have interesting, they take some liberties, and they're really fun in Evil Dead Rise. But again, like all this iconography really develops, and it's all developing from the first movie. So the first movie, a lot of times the first movie is kind of like the basic bitch movie where people are just learning how to make a film. But it turns out that even if they were unrealized at the time, Sam Raimi was touching on a lot of the things that he wanted to develop on later. Maybe he didn't have the money or the time to realize them then, or the budget, but they were there. He
Yeah.
wanted to use the mirror. He wanted to use this. He wanted to use that. He wanted to show this weird demon POV through the woods, which is in all the other movies. That's a fun theme in the other movies. I don't know. I just rambled a whole lot,
No,
but
you
I like the dawn of all this iconography. It's not all super original necessarily, but the way he did it really stands out.
and you know what's interesting too? Like, there was a question asked of him, like, hey, when you get a bigger budget, do you think you're going to be less creative? He goes, yeah.
Yeah,
And
you've been pounding that drum for 500 episodes of this show.
yeah, and like I love that though. I love that he went, yeah, because there's a scene in this where Cheryl has to levitate. We didn't have wires. We didn't have a crane. We just had to figure out how to make her levitate in this cabin in Tennessee.
They
And
use a
so
frame.
yeah, yeah, they did. So I wrote down what they I listened to what they did a couple times, but I forgot exactly how they did it. But like they just figured out an ingenious method, or maybe a frame, to just make her seem like she was levitating. And I love that about it. Like it's just, I guess what I like most about it, it's called The Evil Dead, but I feel like it's bursting with life. And you can almost feel Sam Raimi in it. Now, like what's interesting, another thing I like about Sam Raimi is when he makes a Spider-Man film, when he makes into the like Doctor Strange into the multiverse, you can always feel him a little bit. And this one, it's like you start you start going like, oh, like it's just really cool that a 20-year-old you watch this and there's the beginnings of what he'll build on, but you just feel it so clear. Like I wish I could make a movie when I was 20 and like kind of let everyone know, okay, this is who this guy is. And I think he did that. It's so I don't know. I love the assuredness of it, and I keep saying that, but I think there's a reason why this movie influenced so many people. I listened to Tarantino talking about it. Tarantino's funny. He's like, yeah, after you watch Evil Dead 2, you're kind of like, I don't need to watch Evil Dead, which is kind of a bummer. But Eli Roth talked about how it changed his life, just the demonic forces and how they floated. I don't know. I just think that this movie is for and like all the Evil Dead films, maybe the first three, you just feel the life in them, and I dig that about him, and I appreciate how Sam Raimi set out to make something so fun. Like these are fun horror movies, even though there's some insane things going on. But it's I think if anything, this is probably the best movie to study of the three because of how they raised the money. They didn't even know how to edit it. So they had to go to New York to get someone to edit it. They didn't even have a sound mix. Then they had to like get Irv Shapiro to like share it around. Then they got Stephen King to write a quote. Then they did film festivals all over the world. Then it almost became declared a video nasty in England. Like there's so much behind it that is interesting to talk about. And I think that's like Evil Dead 2 is a more polished, technically fun gonzo picture, more assured. But I think this one is more interesting to talk about. And I think Army of Darkness is just insane and I love it. But I don't know. This has been a real highlight of my recent podcasting, just kind of revisiting this movie and learning, like really going and like finding the most obscure interviews from 82 and listening to it. And I've really enjoyed that about it. Just kind of like, realizing how much I love this film. And there's some great gore. I mean, you have the pencil scene, you have
Dude,
Ash's
pencil
leg.
to the ankle. That
Yeah,
was brutal.
brutal. Like, and then you have this Ash's legs being scraped, just wide open. Like, there's some really great
Totally
gore.
hokey, but you're just in it.
Yeah, and like, even when the Deadites just become this, it's funny. The actors had to leave, so all the other actors basically had to play Cheryl and all the other people throughout this. They call it shemping, which I love. And so anybody who was there, pretty much everyone on the cast played someone else in the background or lifting a door or a dead body. And I also like I love the sense of humor of it and the sound mix too. Like these demons are kind of jerks, John. Like on a scale, are they evil? Are they jerks? Like how would you define these evil dead in this movie? Because they like to have fun and they're kind of dicks and they like to mess with you. Like how would you describe them?
I think they're purely insidious, but they're like 12 years old. They're
Yeah.
like their maturity is preteen, but they're 100% insidious. They want to swallow your soul, right? We're not using that terminology yet, by the way. That came in movie
Yeah.
number two. But this was just to join us, right? But yeah, they're totally insidious. But again, it's with the maturity of a 12-year-old or a 13-year-old. This is like these demons just got released, and I don't know if that's necessarily an inaccurate interpretation of how that would go if any random demon, even think of Constantine, just to wind it forward 25 years, which is still not a recent movie, but even if you wind it back to 2006 or wind it up to 2006 Constantine, we see this vision of hell with thousands of demons, right? There are minor demons and major demons that can possess people. Well, if it's a super minor demon, and this is its first opportunity to ever interact with, we'll call it the prime material plane of existence of souled entities, it's going to be like an asshole kid in a candy store. It doesn't, and it has too much power and it's unfettered, or at least it thinks it's unfettered. So it's going to behave like an idiot. It doesn't know what the consequences are. It doesn't know what its limits are. It doesn't know what its chances of failure are. So maybe that's what these demons are. They're giggling all the time because they are just tickled pink by what's happening. And they don't realize that this human, if you give them enough time, could actually figure out that dismembering them is going to end them. And they might not even know that dismembering them ends them, right? They don't know the rules yet.
Yeah.
Like, so I don't think it's a poor take. I think it's just that in modern movies, so many other movies and books exist that we have to skip past that most of the time, and we just need to come up with more clever demons that know the rules. But these demons didn't know the rules. These were the first demons to cross over, maybe.
Yeah, and they're probably a little overconfident. They just want to party because sometimes they go down pretty easy, but they really want to murder. They are insidious, but yeah, they don't think about a lot of things yet. So you're right. I don't think you develop that kind of thought process until you're maybe in your 20s, 30s. So so yeah, these are immature, not immature, they're just preteen uh evil demons who have gotten out for the first time and are attacking and having fun.
While we're being meta about this, by the way, right? Bear with me. You're a demon, not a soul that went to hell, but a demon. You've only ever existed in hell. You are a piece of crap in hell, right? You're just a peon, and you get this opportunity to interact with these totally regular people. You don't have any context, right? But these totally regular people in this cabin in the woods. So when you see something you can stab someone with, like a pencil, you don't realize that that's not the best weapon you could grab. Not that there are other weapons. And so when you stab someone in the ankle and you just twist it around like yeah, like for 13 seconds on screen, like a smarter demon would know I'm going to stab them in the ankle, but then right after I stab them in the ankle, I'm going to make them fall and then I'm going to go for their throat or I'm going to gouge their eyes. They're not thinking that. They're thinking, yeah, 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 right here in the like. For all they know, it's going to kill them. They don't know it kills a human. Like they're truly naive. They're a kid who's been given power but doesn't know what the rules of the game are at all.
And they could play hide or seek. They could, like, sometimes they announce themselves. Like, remember when Cheryl announces herself by looking at all the cards, like she knows what all the cards are. Like they
Right.
Cheryl could have not done that and just murdered one of them. But instead, you make this huge levitating thing, like, I'm gonna get you all, like, we're having fun with this. Yeah, they're just having a good old time. I think they're not into, this isn't The Dark and the Wicked. This isn't Exorcist. This is
They
just,
don't know what the consequences are. They don't know what the urgency is.
this could be called party demons.
Right. This is like demon Rumstupa.
Hey, where'd Hank go? Oh, he's terrorizing some campers. He got out. Just, yeah, just a terrorizing. Yeah, they finally get loose of hell where they've just been spit on and it's just miserable down there. And now they can beat up on some campers and have some fun. I dig it. Yeah, because yeah, I guess if you're older, you're not going to deal with that business. Like you and I know, work smart, not dumb. I think the older you get, you're like, I don't want to hurt my back, so I'm just going to do this. I'm going to use a wheelbarrow. And so these guys don't know, they aren't there yet. I like that. They're just party demons. And
Yeah,
then
they don't know what's up. By the way, so okay, ready? So I'm casting this story like these are like preteen or totally ignorant, kind of idiotic, or not idiotic, ignorant demons to the urgency to what they're trying to accomplish. So towards the end, right? Ash throws the book into the fire, and this seems to be ending the demons. However, as the demons are ending, or we'll just say they're just like what a world, like the melting wicked witch. uh Out of them burst these much larger, like
yeah.
as if it was like the Incredible Hulk almost, these demon arms. Now these demon arms end up going with the awesome claymation stop motion disintegration of our demons. However, are we to believe then that again there's a much more menacing demon, these demons with these giant hands that could crush a human head, like just squeezing the juice out of a lemon, like there are these more serious demons that could have crossed over if these demons didn't screw up, or if these demons had done something right, because we see these big arms break out of like two different demons, But again, it's as these demons are doing their claymation stop motion disintegration, which again was awesome and gross
Yeah.
and fantastic. But we know there are these more serious entities, and that more serious entity just failed to make it through.
And they're trying to come in through that demon to
Yeah,
like
it's
get there.
almost like when the weak demons, when the preteen demons had failed, the more serious demons were like, "Holy crap, get in there now!" But it wasn't enough time.
Like varsity comes in.
Right.
Yeah.
Whereas at the end of Evil Dead 2, that happens with the tree and the cosmic extra dimensional storm.
Oh, yeah. You know what? That's a great point. And, I would even wager the one at the end of the film. We don't quite know what it is, but that one seems pretty varsity as well. It's not the JV squad, or it's not the JVD squad. It's the junior varsity demons. This is the varsity starting quarterback demon busting through the house and coming after Ash. Yeah, those arms are crazy. But yeah, I mean, there's no explanation for that because they probably, if those demons had that, they would have used that, John. I don't think they were holding anything back. They're just preteen demons having fun. And with those arms, they probably could have had fun. So yeah, I think maybe they were dying and then the things exploded out of them. More deadites. I mean, they raised the dead. They could come through that. Maybe some of the soul of those two people were still around, right? Like Scott was still had something, or Cheryl, or maybe there's still something left to be taken over, so they tried to come through. I don't know. I like that idea. I'm trying to work that out in my head because I never thought about that, John.
It's interesting, and I don't know if so. That's a trope, by the way, that I've seen in several movies where a demon comes into the world through another entity, literally physically through another entity. Like that happened in Phantasm 2. That wasn't until 1988. That happened in it was the first or second Demons movies, but it was that they were 85 and 88, where literally like in the Demons movie you see like a demon, one of the infected demons, like double over and then out of its back tears its way this much larger, more horrifying demon. So like I wonder if that was influenced specifically by this because I can't remember an older movie than 1981 where that happened, but I have seen that happen in later movies. In a weird way, even Legend almost touched on that. When darkness first enters the screen, he kind of uses his claw and tears a hole through the fabric of existence and walks into his castle, but he's doing it through our view of someone else. So again, it's just this may have been the dawn of a trope.
Yeah. I mean, it's a
Whereas
great
most of the
trope.
tropes in this movie were done very well in this movie, but may have been borrowed elsewhere. Like a lot of the Deadite stuff. There's that Japanese movie House
House. Yeah, which is great.
from 1975 or
Have you watched
so.
that? It's 77 House. Have you watched House?
77. Dude, so I saw that in high school, so I remember nothing about it. I just know there's like Evil Dead, Deadite like influence from it.
Yeah. And but some people say that Sam Raimi must have ripped off House, but I don't know. They came up with Within the Woods in 78 and they have been going to drive-ins to watch it. I don't know. It seemed like a stretch. Like some people are convinced that they ripped off House, but House came
I
out in
will say
77.
back then, the time that it took, even in our youth, the time that it took in like the 90s for a major hit in Asia to come to the US, it could be a high budget action movie. Dude, Ong Bak took like 2 years to make it to America
Yeah.
with Tony Jaa.
Yeah.
So, like, am I saying that he had to have gotten it from there? No, but it is quite similar. So I don't know what to make of that. Also, I don't know movie history wise if there aren't yet other movies that have things that would make House or Evil Dead seem a little derivative. I don't know the answer to these questions. But I
Mhm.
will say, yeah, back then it was a lot harder for that to happen. Whereas like nowadays, when we think of it now, like a movie that came out last year and then a movie comes out this year, totally could have been the case. Like just easy. They saw it, they ran with it right then. They peppered it into a movie that was already in production, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but
Yeah.
again, House had a lot of behavioral components that were hearkened in Evil Dead.
And you know, so it came out in 77 and it wasn't distributed in the States until much later. So it's like maybe these guys are just on the same wavelength. You know, I mean, you know, Hammer films, like the idea of sending people to an isolated place and harassing them is not new. And that happened before 77 and especially before Evil Dead was made. So, yeah, I mean, just you get, I guess you get in such a slippery slope and you're like, these movies have similarities. They must have mimicked that. It's just like, because then you go back to, you know, like I said, Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, that has sets that were purposely built askew to make it look like the world was. So, I mean, Raimi might have borrowed from that. He borrowed from the Three Stooges. So it's, especially if you're a 20-year-old filmmaker, you're not on tour yet. You're not, like, you're not for most people. So I don't think you're going to go and be like, this is my shot. Here's what I want. You're going to pull from what you've seen and what you love and what you studied and like what you think would work. If like, I think the more you make films, the more you begin to like understand your style. But I don't know. I wouldn't call this a happy accident though. Like, you know, some people make films and like they're just insane. And you're like, that was a lot of fun. That was crazy. But like the filmmaker's like, I don't know, we just did it. Like this one seemed more controlled, but also more chaotic. And I like that a lot. I keep saying this movie is really interesting, John, but I don't care. I really enjoyed that
Well, I
talking
like
about it.
seeing old movies though. When you watch the older movies, like really watch them, not like throw it on the background or know it exists and watch 20 minutes here or there. You see how the trickle down the lane, you know, influenced other movies. Like that's why I love seeing what was it? What was it called? Invasion of like the Space Vampires or something, Mario Bava
Mm-hmm.
1965. That's considered to be heavily the origin of 1985's Life Force and 1979's Alien. Because the space jockey from Alien used to be like just celebrated as what an original idea, and they don't even explain what it is, and like it's so mysterious. What a
Mm-hmm.
great that's essentially like hardcore, clearly stolen from this 1965 movie. I don't know how to put it, but so but no one's watching that,
Yeah.
so no one knows that. And by the way, Alien did it way better.
Mm-hmm.
So there you go. But again, even with like things like life force and this fear of the other, or kind of like with Alien, where you're infected and people don't know it, that was another thing that was made very popular in uh, this invasion of the space vampires. And yes, I know there's the thing from another world, but that did it differently. Whereas Alien and Life Force did it more like this. So even if it was influenced by something in the past, even if Sam Raimi happened to see the Japanese movie House, he did it his own. He did it in a way that worked and
Yeah.
worked well. And if it happened to be coincident, then that too. I'm not here to try and say what I think is the case. I am saying that about Alien and Life Force, by the way. Although Life
Right.
Force has a lot of incredibly ambitious uh, things going on all its own, and so does Alien, way above and beyond and Mario Bava's 1965 movie. By the way, watch it anyway. You're going to love the iconography in there that was later improved upon by by filmmakers who are standing on the shoulders of
You know,
giants.
it's funny. That's Dan O'Banion. He came up with the idea for Alien and Life Force. So I don't
He
know.
was both.
Yeah.
That's
And,
interesting.
and you know, Dan O'Bannon omitted to stealing from the best. Like when he was talking about making Alien, he's like, yeah, you steal from the best. Like you write from the best. He's like, I drew so many images from so many different places for Alien. And I love that. And I love that everyone goes, well, they ripped off Alien. I'm like, guys, Alien ripped off tons of movies. So it's, but you know what I think, John? This is my theory. Alien, a lot of, you know, Jurassic Park, all these films, or like a classic, Forgetting Sarah Marshall, they borrow so many tropes of prior films, but they're really well made, so no one
Yeah.
complains. But if there's a mediocre film that films familiar and borrows just as many tropes, people are like, oh, they borrow from that, they borrow from that, they borrow
Right.
from that.
Then it's just crap because it's not original.
Yeah,
Right.
and they're like, oh well, it's like, so you have two movies. One borrows the same amount as the other one, but it's better. I feel like people are just gonna be like, that movie rules, and then the other one, yeah, it's like derivative and it borrows. So it's the quality of a production can sway like whether or not it's decided that it's derivative or a ripoff. At least in my head.
Well, don't get me wrong. There is that, but then there's also like, does it look like a cheaper version of what it borrowed from, or did they borrow from it and then give it a new skin?
Yeah, that's true.
So there are a couple things, but you could give it a new skin, but still execute it poorly. Well, now we're just going to criticize you and call you crap. You execute it with a new skin and you do a fantastic job. It's innovative because you made it your own.
There it is. I like that. Any other things you want to talk about for the from this?
Well, that I can't stress enough how cool that claymation was at the
Oh
end.
yeah,
I know, folks, if you haven't seen this movie and you're like, 25 or 35 and you go back and watch this, it's not impressive effects, but it is, even though it's claymation from like 1981 done with a low budget or stop motion, if you will, it is so gross. It is still effectively gross. And for the gore hound in you, it's worth visiting. And boy, is there more I want to touch on? Can we just, there is something interesting that I like about this movie that I like to criticize though. So in the beginning, Scott's the one who knows about the house, right? It's his cousin's house or whatever. And as they're approaching the house, the swinging bench, whatever you call that, the swinging
oh,
chair,
great shot.
it's banging against the house. And the moment he grabs the key, it just stops. And he looks over because he noticed it stopped, and no one makes a thing of it. And don't get me wrong, in reality, though, you just think like, oh, I just didn't realize that it was getting lighter and lighter, right? You don't think anything of it. However, skip forward to the what I'll call the trap door basement door. When that thing opens, it just opens. It just flings open. Everyone is eating dinner and it flings open. And then you're like, okay, let's all get the hell out of the house, right? But sometimes there's this disconnect from reality. You're just like, okay, I
It's the
guess they're
weather.
just gonna go investigate. But then someone says, oh, maybe it was an animal. And Scott even says, an animal? Like, what are you, an idiot? No animal did this. And I'm like, okay, you just suspended my suspension of disbelief. What do you think did it if it wasn't a goddamn animal? Get out of that goddamn house. Like, so
Yeah.
like, these movies, they pull all these fast ones and they expect you to go with it, and you just go with it because you're like, the door randomly opens and everyone's watching the door open, and there's no gust or anything, but then they go investigate, but no one says anything. In this movie, someone said something very clear, and then someone else is like, no, you idiot, and they still go down there.
Oh, and that just builds. You know what's funny? They even call them idiots. Bruce calls them idiots. Sam calls them idiots. And yeah, that door is huge. And now that's a joke of cinema where something opens. Maybe it was the wind. Like that's a very heavy trap door. Uh, no, but I love that. I love that they still go down there. But you know what? With horror cinema, it's gonna sound really weird. I don't know what a better comparison is, but like, I don't know. You're at a water park and you see a water slide. If you sit there and you study it, and then you go, okay, you know exactly where it's going to go. Then when you go down, you're like, I already knew I was going left. I already knew I was going right. I already knew I was going left. I already knew I was going right. You're not going to enjoy it. Just get on that water slide and have fun with it. You know what I'm saying? Like, don't be like, I knew everything that was going to happen. Like, just have fun with horror films. I think sometimes that's what these are for. They're supposed to like be crowd pleasers and they're supposed to be fun. I think when you start, I think too many people have like analyzed this into oblivion or look at other films. So even though they're idiots by going in that trapdoor, that's all part of the fun. And you're like, yeah, go down there, you moron. And I like that they even talk about it. Yeah, maybe it was an animal or something. Like, no, you idiot. I like that. And then they still go down there. And then you just have a big stupid smile on your face because these morons. I don't know. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just curious, the approach. And there was one other thing that I thought was really interesting about this movie, which I think that both for its time and especially for its budget, this was a clever and ambitious idea. And that is that anyone who is infected with evil in this movie starts to look worse and worse and worse to the tune of four totally different makeups in some cases.
Mm-hmm.
Right in the beginning, you're infected. You've got some veins, some whited out eyes. It's a little more than that, but still, you got a veiny pale face and whited out eyes, and your eyelid areas are kind of like a bluish gray, right? But then later, like say Cheryl, who ends up in the basement, locked in the basement. Right after she's locked in the basement, she starts to look grody or almost like an old hag that died, and her skin is sagging and it's more pale and it's getting crusty and flaky, and everything's falling apart and her eyes look even worse and her hair looks worse. And then later it's even worse. Right now it's almost like the open wounds that she took from taking some hits are there, and her whole head is falling apart. And then yet later, it almost looks like Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, like a leather face mask that's so loose it's about to fall off while simultaneously covered in blood. So like sometimes the same infected demon will go through as many as like four different makeups, and that's before even the disintegration stop motion scene at the end, which is really just an effect. So it's interesting to me that we see that with more than one of these monstrosities. Linda maintains just looking at phase one most of the time, but Linda spends a lot of her time not actively doing anything or taking damage, but just kind of antagonizing Ash
Yeah, sitting
the
on the
time that
floor and
she's
yeah.
infected. So that's why I don't think she advances as far. But I thought that was interesting. These things get super chonky, grody, rusty, sludgy as the movie goes on, or as their time as a demon goes on. And I thought that was really cool. Like that, think about how many zombie movies you watch, and you're like, you could be watching The Walking Dead or 28 Days Later. You're like, okay, well, these things have been on this island or away from a good food source for all this time. It would have just disintegrated.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We're seeing that kind of hyper realized in a short time frame, but still we're seeing it happen. We're just seeing them just degenerate, almost like their possession of a human body is taking a metaphysical toll on the human body, and its atoms are not holding on to electrons and neutrons properly. It is literally falling apart like it's being irradiated.
Oh, I love it. And I love that mostly they just had to do those makeup effects because people had to leave and like they had to just make them look worse. Or you
That's more
know,
money though.
yeah, yeah. Well, I think paying the actors is probably more money because then you got to just keep them there every
Well, I
day.
guess so. I guess
And so
so.
they did a lot of it in a basement in Detroit later on, but I because they probably couldn't bring the actors back. So yeah, but I love that idea. Like, and also there's no continuity person. Bruce had to know where all his blood was every shot, which I kind of love. No one was there taking photos of the continuity. But yeah, they do change. They do wrap it. Some don't. Some do. Some in phase one. I love this movie, John. I don't think I expressed that enough.
It's been a very special revisiting. A lot of
Yeah,
times we revisit a movie and I end up appreciating it more from a film history perspective. And in this case, we're revisiting a 44-year-old movie, and I'm just appreciating it. Yes, the film history aspect is absolutely very present. This was a low budget movie, but this is still like if you're a horror fan or and more specifically like a gorehound, this could very well still be entertaining. I don't know what age I'm going to put the cutoff at because there is going to be a cutoff age, but you don't have to be in your 40s or older to appreciate this still, I don't
yeah.
think. I don't know about a 25-year-old. Sorry, 25-year-olds. I'm not targeting you. I'm just saying that you might not be as satisfied, but our 35-year-olds maybe.
It's
Um,
it's definitely more breasty than I remembered. Well,
Well,
that's
well, yeah, yeah. There's an undressing scene in the beginning, and then there's of course the tree rape scene.
yeah, yeah. Which Sam in an interview said that he wouldn't have done. Like a couple years later when he was doing Evil Dead 2, he's like, yeah, I was young. I don't like it. He said that he offended a lot of people. He said he wanted to get people like going, holy crap, but instead he offended a lot of people, and he said he would never have done it. But he
To
said he
just
was
to be
young.
clear, he would have hid the breasts but still had the tree rape.
No, I just the whole scene. I think
Oh, the
he,
tree rape scene.
yeah, like he said that he never
Okay,
would have done
gotcha.
that because
I
he's like,
thought you just meant nudity. I
yeah,
understand.
he seemed hurt that he offended people. He said that he wanted to shock people, not offend.
And yet, that is an iconic scene that gets revisited in subsequent movies. That was revisited. I'm not calling it a great movie, but it was like Children of the Corn Part 2 or 3. It happens, in fact, to Charlize Theron's minor character, as she was a minor character in that movie. It was the Children of the Corn where it goes into the big city, where the kids are
Oh.
adopted in the big city. But that happens in that happens in, boy, I know it's happened in several movies
You
I've
know,
seen.
and it's revisited, and then listen, it got so much press at the time, and I
It's
think so many
absolutely in the
people
Evil Dead
talked about it.
remake.
Yeah, so when you make this film, you gotta, and also he wanted it to be entertaining and hardcore. They didn't want to pull their punches. So I think they also knew at the time how, cynically you had to add probably like, I don't know, some nudity because it was 1980. Like the director of Valley Girl, the studio told her that she needed to add 3 instances of nudity in her film. Like you need
For an
three.
80s horror movie, this is not a lot of nudity.
Yeah, exactly. But like they're like, okay, we'll add a little bit. But like that scene, the problem is if you take that out, does it get talked about as much? And so he
No.
learned from it. He expressed regret about having it, but also it's a scene that was a real lightning rod at the time, and it
I'm
started a
not
lot of conversations.
I do not want to be the person to suggest that Sam Raimi was being disingenuous. He may have very well meant that he did not, that he was upset that he offended people, but he had to know he was going to offend people when he
Oh
made that
yeah,
scene.
yeah,
You had to. And at the same time, you had to know that was a cool scene. It can be offensive and be a cool original idea at the same. The movie's called Evil Dead,
yeah.
not so nice dead.
Maybe he thought if he had a second chance at it, he might have
But
taken out that sound effect of the thump,
I
um,
I don't
because
know. I don't think that mattered. I don't.
yeah,
I think don't wrong. You can absolutely wish that you didn't offend as many people as you did. You had to know you were going to offend people. You still did it. You thought it was a good idea. It was a good idea. Pushing people in horror is what horror fans, at least to some degree, want. Whether or not they want it to that degree is a point of contention, but horror fans generally want to be pushed by being startled more with a good jump scare, a more startling jump scare, right? With more nudity, they want to be, or titillated with more gore or more shocking gore or more brutal gore. This was just an early point in the timeline, and as a result, I think that it found disproportionate criticism than it would have today.
I mean, it was 81 as well, and
Of course,
and it was unrated, and so I think a
of
lot of
course.
people weren't ready for that. And you know, he definitely wanted to offend when he did this, but sometimes I don't know a good example. Like, you what's a good example? You like want to do something, but the end result is much worse than you like. You're like, oh, I'm gonna do this. It's gonna be great, and then what happens? You're like, oh man, I wanted to offend, but not like that. Or you just tell a really bad joke or something, and then it just gets like it actually offends way too much, and you're like, "Whoa, I wish I had to redo it that." And I think that's a lot of what Evil Dead 2 was. So I mean, listen, the movie's still revered. This is a movie that hasn't been looked at and like canceled. I think Sam Raimi saying that was, I think he seemed pretty. He would redo it. I think if he had a chance, he would redo it, but it still was a lightning rod at the time. And when you make a movie that's small, that little, and you have to get it worldwide distribution, you kind of have to have talking points, and that's not good. I'm not saying that's good or bad, or everyone should include scenes like that. But I just think whatever they did here made this an all timer film. And also, I think by making having a final boy in this and having other, like having a final boy and having other Ash is going to leave the cabin, but he can't, and there's several smart ideas that made people bond with it that this movie has such a you and I were Comic Cons. You saw the line at Bruce Campbell's uh, booth every single show that he was at. Like the guy always had big lines, and people revere this franchise. So yeah, and now we're talking about it, and I'm excited. I rambled a lot, but I don't care. This
Classic.
is good. But like, I don't know if you and I just talk. I feel like the scenes have been talked about at like all over the place. So I wanted to talk about something else, like have a conversation that goes somewhere, not just hey, that scene's awesome or that scene's awesome.
You
So
mean do a play-by-play
yeah,
and walk
exactly.
through the movie?
Yeah, or like just I think some movies have been talked about a lot. Like I really liked our Predator discussion because I feel like we talked about other aspects of it. Like that's what I enjoy on MFF. I feel like we talk about some movies that are popular, but I think the conversations we have are kind of new, which I enjoy.
You know,
So
it's funny. It's because you're getting our 50th conversation about the movie.
yeah, exactly.
If we just saw the movie, we'd be doing the play-by-play. But
Yeah,
because we've seen this movie like 50 times,
yeah.
a lot of that stuff is old hat.
And a lot of people too talking about or listening to this have seen Evil Dead, so they don't really need the play by play. If we're talking about a really obscure thing, that's probably better. But hey, John, where can people find you before we get out of here?
Boy, John's Horror Corner. I'm on all the social media that I'm not too old for, and I've got a little tab at the top right when you go to movies, films, and flicks.
So I'm gonna go check them out. He has some new reviews up. Actually, this might be released like a couple months after recording, so by then you might have some reviews up. So just go read
Get more
those.
reviews up.
Yeah, more reviews up. All right, so this was great, John. So for me, Mark Hoffmeyer, for John Levingood, this is Movies, Films, and Flicks. We'll see you next week.